Good evening, everyone. I'm Tarun from Final Year CS of SCCE. I like to apologize in the beginning for postponing the webinar for what say around 20 days. I think I'm too late already. Uh, I actually didn't expect this at all because of the rains and was stuck with a lot of work. My internet died. Every problem came again, and I'm glad that I actually got to do this now. I think we can all start with this. If you have any questions, you can ask me in the Q&A app. It'll be on your left side, I guess. I'll be able to answer it. Please be aware that there will be at least 5 minutes delay between what I'm talking and what's visible to you. So I'll be answering questions a bit late. Okay, and at the end of the webinar, I think we can have a feedback session or something, and we can also be able to. I'll also give you my contact detail, and you can ping me anytime. So, uh, what is Android? Android is a open source platform which was developed by Andy Rubin and his team, and it was bought by Google, who bought it out first. So they basically started it as a alternative to an Apple's iOS, and now it has grown into a platform which is almost everywhere now. See, if the advantage of Android that it runs on, it has a Linux kernel, and hence it can run almost on anything. Say your it runs on your phone, it runs on your TV, it runs in cars, etc. So uh, the basic concepts of developing applications for Android remains the same regardless of the platform which it runs on. So if you develop an app for the phone, you can actually use it on the TV itself. If you want to develop an app for your car, you can develop an alternative app, similar app for your phone or something. So that's it about Android. And so Android, basically you can program for Android in a multiple variety of languages, and there are as an introduction to mobile app development, we should be knowing about two things. There's something called a native app. A native app is something in which the entire code is written in a language which is native to the app itself. That is, for example, in the case of Android, it is Java, because Java is the platform language on which Android is written, and hence any app that is written in Java runs natively on the app, on the phone. That is, it doesn't require any special compiler or something. Uh, and there are something called as web applications which can be packaged into an Android app. Say you write something in HTML5 and CSS and JavaScript, obviously, for any other manipulations. So I'm sorry. If you have a web application, it makes more sense for you to easily port that web application into an Android application. There are a lot of frameworks which let you do that. For example, Ionic, Cordova, PhoneGap, etc. Everything lets you do that. Today I'm going to be restricting myself to pure Android, that is native apps only. You can also feel free to explore any other platforms. So depending on your requirement, you can make a decision whether to go with a native app or a web app. There's something called a hybrid app as well. A hybrid app combines both the native code and the web application side code and delivers it as a single package. The When you're writing performance intensive code, that is something which if you want your app to be super fast and super responsive, I'd say you go for native. If your app has to look the same, if you want the same feel and user experience in all the platforms that you develop for, then I say that you better go for a web application or a hybrid application. So, so that's the background about Android, and I'll be using Android Studio version 1.5. It doesn't matter about what version you're in. All the versions almost have the same UI and features. That is until version 2. We'll talk about that later. And for my version control system, I'll be using GitHub. I'll let you know about what is version control system and how to use it at the end of the project. We'll be making a sample application, a simple login feature or something. We'll think about it once we go in. 1 minute, give me a minute. Okay, I'm sorry for the interruption. And all right, now let's say version control system. So I'll give you a quick rundown of what we're going through. The web screen that you're seeing is what will have the is what basically what I'm going to cover. So Android background, layouts, activities, life cycle. So it might all sound like Greek and Latin, but uh, so basically the Android application will have two major fronts. The front end, which is visible to the user, that is the UI or the user experience side, and the logic side, which is on the behind. So basically you can adopt any convention that you want, say a model view controller or anything that's feasible to use. So basically everything on Android will have a page. That is, every screen that you're seeing is built in a layout. So layout will have what are the elements that should be listed and how it should be listed. So you can compare it to HTML and CSS. So layouts are written in XML. You will be defining what element should be there, how it should look also. So another thing that you should keep in mind while designing for Android is that the number of devices is too huge. There are devices which have screens of 2.5 inch, two screens which has devices which have screens of 5.5 inch, and there are tablets also. So you need to make your UI look the same, or at least it shouldn't look awkward in whatever screen the user is using. So care should be there taken in building layouts. I think we'll just start over with a sample application, and I'll be able to explain all the features of the, I mean, what layouts are, what activities are, what the life cycle is, etc., using a sample application. So I'm going to create a new project. I'll also show you the code sample of my current application, so you'll be understanding the complexities even better. So I'll first change the thing to uh, right, I'm sharing my old application now. I'm going to create new pro new new project. I'm going to name it a sample application. This is your company's domain, so you can name it whatever you want, and based on this name only the sample, I mean the package name will be named. And once you make a package name, you cannot change it, so make sure you do it now. So I'll just type it hello world. So hello world dot sample app is going to be my package name. So there's something called the SDK levels that you should know. So SDK levels, what is an SDK? SDK is a software development kit. So in Android, when you are developing for different versions of Android, you would have noticed the differences in your phones itself. Like for when your phone was using KitKat, the UI would be will be of a certain, what's say, certain, it will have a certain look and feel to it. Once you have upgraded it to Lollipop, the UI would have changed drastically. So every element in the UI which will be using it is defined in the SDK. So the SDK will have files about and definitions of how the UI will look, what are the classes available in the file system, etc. So for example, you in Lollipop, I mean in Lollipop you will be having material design, and prior to Lollipop you won't have material design. So that is because the material designs, UI features, files, everything was introduced only in Lollipop and not before Lollipop. So you should be able to decide what devices to target. So typically, as Google recommends, you should target devices which run ice cream sandwich and beyond. So anyone who's using Gingerbread might have to forego installing your app, because almost no one uses Gingerbread now. If you see someone using a Gingerbread, please ask them to upgrade, because you cannot develop for every version that's out there. So there are multiple API levels. So API is an application program interface. The levels are used instead of having all the random names like ice cream sandwich, jelly bean. They have for easy programmatical usage. They have just mentioned it in terms of levels. So API level 15 is what we are going to do, the minimum SDK, and maximum you can run it on anything else. So minimum is what you should matter about. And if you are developing for an Android watch, you should be ticking this Wear SDK also. And if you're developing for a TV, again tick this. If you're developing a car, tick this. Glass, Google Glass also has this. So I'm going to develop for a phone and a tablet which runs ICS and beyond. So next, now we come to the activities. So what is an activity? Oh shit! I'm very sorry. I didn't change the screen sharing properly. This friend is. Are you guys able to see the? Sure, what you're seeing. Are you guys able to see the new project window? I think not. One second. I'm sorry. I think I'll just redo this. Video screen hasn't updated at all. Uh, Thanks, Akash. You're talking about the project screen, right? API levels. Yeah, I'll just change it back. One second. Give me a minute. I think you'll be able to see it now. Okay, so I'm going to start a new Android project. I'm going to name it as sample hello world, and the application name should always begin with a uppercase letter. So make sure you do that. And next, ah, sure, we are sharing it. So yeah, I think it's coming right now. Akash, I think you should be able to see it now. All right. So, what are activities? So, I was talking to you about layouts, which are basically the screens which defined what should be on the screen and how it should look. Oh, I guess it's not showing everything. One second, I just broadcast my entire screen. That's screen section. Are you able to see this? Are you guys able to see the Akash? I guess you're able to see. Okay. So the activities are the logic behind the UI controllers. So if you have developed web applications or something else, you know that whatever that's on the UI is I mean what Google has tried done here is they have separated the UI from the logic. So the UI is defined in the XML. What should be there? It's stuck at quick start. It's now can you see this activity screen? Wait, start a new Android project. Control. Can you see this actually? Ah, it's fine. So activities basically they are the logic behind whatever is displayed on the screen. So what are activities? Activities are classes which Java classes which instantiate the UI, which will wait for users' response on the UI, users' interaction with the UI, and then respond appropriately. Say you're watching a video on YouTube. You're watching a video on YouTube. Um, you will be opening the YouTube app first, and the videos which are displayed, the videos that are displayed will be. One second, a minute. I'll just put my phone on airplane mode. Yeah. So the videos that are displayed will be defined in the layout. How to define the videos, how to display the videos, etc. will be defined in the layout files. And what videos to display, what to do if I click a video, how to play a video, etc. will be defined in the activities. So the activities basically they are of multiple types, and all that you see here are templates. So if I have want an empty activity, will be presented to the blank screen. If I wanted to make something go full screen, say I'm building a movie watching app, and I want to watch the movies in full screen. In that case, then it makes more sense to fully make it. I mean, make the activity occupy the full screen. And this is for Google AdMob ads. You're seeing ads in your phone, so if you want to integrate ads into your thing, you can use it. So an app can have multiple and any number of activities. And Google Maps, obviously, if you want to introduce maps, it's easier. And login activity, almost every app these days has a login activity. So it makes more sense for you to have a template for it and quickly construct login from this. But what I am going to teach you now is to how to make it old school, because this login activity has a lot of let's say production, it's production level code. Directly you can publish it on the market. It has a lot of extra code, like it will have autofill for your email. It will access your contacts to find out whatever names you're typing, etc. So this has a lot of inbuilt checks. It is perfect code. I'm going to teach you how to make a normal code. And this is master detail flow, as you can see on the settings screen. And the navigation drawer activity, you would have seen the Play Store. So once you slide it from the top side, you can see your elements in it. And a scrolling activity for, say, Facebook, or this is actually a perfect example, is the Google Plus app. So the Google Plus app has activities like this, and the settings activity, whatever settings you want to make in your app, you can use this. This is the tabbed activity. A tab activity, say WhatsApp, calls, chats, contacts. You can just swipe between those tabs. I'm going to go with the empty activity. As you see, there's not much of a difference here. A blank activity will have a menu added automatically and a button here. I don't need this button now, so I'm going to with an empty activity. And I'm going to name it. You have to name a activity and you can generate a layout. I'm just naming it main activity. And the components are about to be loaded. It takes time to build this. In the meantime, I'll go to inception. All right, I'll go to okay, after active, we know what are activities. We need to know what is the life cycle of an activity. So this is not, I'll finish this circle. Okay, so as you can see this image, this is an image from the Google's official developer documentation. Um, Once a user clicks the app, I mean, once the activity or whatever, let's say you just have one activity in your app. So obviously that will be the one that is called when you are clicking your app's icon on the home screen on your phone. So once a clicker started, the on create method will be called. So there's a function called the on create, which will be called, which will be defined in the activity, and that will be activated first. So what will the on create typically have? The on create typically will have cache data. So once you will be swiping between activities, right? So in that case, some of the information on the screen will be cached onto your local disk and your RAM. So that cache thing is called a bundle, and it will be stored in a bundle. So it will have cache. It will just first, I mean, it will just search for a cached copy of the data, and if it's not present, it will just create a new one. So it will first search for a cache copy. Then what it will do is it will set the layout for the activity. So say if I have a login page, once the login activities on create is called, it should display my UI screen saying that these are the fields available and a login button. So it makes more sense. It obviously makes sense to display the UI first and then load the logic later, because if I display the UI last and load the logic before, the user will be wondering what the app is doing with a blank screen. So once the user activity is created, it will call the onStart method, and the activity becomes visible to the user. So once the onStart is called, it becomes visible and you can interact with it. So the on started once the activity started, it calls the on resume and goes to a resume state. That is the default state, and you see when you open an app. So on a default state, you interact with an app. Suddenly you get a text from someone else. So you go to that app. In that case, you switch apps. In that case, what happens is it goes from the resume state, calls on pass, and goes to the paused state. Actually, say you're getting a call, and in that case the activity will be running in the background. So it is not visible to you and you cannot interact with it. It's partially visible. Say it'll be glossy. You know what I'm talking about, right? I don't know the exact words to describe it. And so it'll be partially visible and the on pass will be called. So what should you do typically in an on pass state? So what a proper behavior of an app is, you should get all the elements that are there in the screen, put it in the cache. So once the user resumes the activity, he can be able to resume from where he left on. Say you have a very long form in your phone, in your application, and you start filling out half the things. The user gets a call and he switches activities. And if you don't do all the caching part, what will happen? The user will have to start it from the beginning, and he gets frustrated and won't use your app. So in that case, you have to cache it on the using the on pass method. So once the user resumes to the app, on resume will be called, and you will be getting the resume state. So what I say, what do I exit? What will happen if I exit the app using the back button? You'll go to the stop state, and you can the stop state is when you will be seeing the app in the recent apps state. So I mean recent apps page. Stop state, if you put the app, I mean if you exit the app, you can still access it by pressing the recent apps button and go there. So the stop state is the state in which the activity is fully hidden, but it will have the memory, I mean it will have a copy of the activities in the memory, and uh, uh, only once the activity is no longer needed, it will be called. Aditi, yeah, it can be changed. It's not the template of the app; it's a template of an activity. An app will have multiple activities, and based on whatever is needed for your current activity, you can choose a template. I think I've answered this question. Yakshas, okay, perfect. All right, done. Okay, I'm done with the current questions. I'm sorry, I'll be checking it back again soon. Okay. Say once in the stop state, it will be hidden everywhere. I mean, your activity will be hidden, and you can access it using the recent apps page. So, if the activity is in memory, say you just switched your apps to play something and then came back to WhatsApp, you'll be back. You'll be seeing what's happening on the. I mean, it will load very fast because it'll just call on restart page. As it was already in memory, it'll load quicker. And once you kill an app from the recent apps page, it goes to the destroyed state, and on destroy will be called. On destroy can either be called by the user himself by killing it on the recent apps page, or the Android system can itself can do it by invoking garbage collection. So garbage collection is another thing that you should be worried about, or you should be aware of. Same, garbage collection is something that runs periodically in an application, and if you had studied C, you know that you'll be using, I mean, pointers in C. Say you'll be using malloc, cloc, free, etc. for your memory management. Android does. And in Java, you don't have pointers. You don't need to allocate memory. You don't need to delocate memory and etc. The OS and the virtual machine itself takes care. So, and it causes some irritation sometimes also because you won't have enough memory to do stuff in your app. And Akash, no, activities are not just functions. Activities are classes. So, I think you know what a class is. A class is a collection of data variables and member functions, and it'll have a number of functions in it. So, as you can see, you will be having on create, on start, on resume, on pause, on restart, etc. These are all the default functions that will be in an activity, regardless of whether you create or no. No, I mean, regardless of whether you create whatever activity of the all the templates available, you can create whatever template. These will be there. These not all of these are essential, but on create is completely essential in order to make your app run. So you can make an activity without any other function except on create, and it will still work. I hope I answered your question. If you have any, just ping again. All right. Now we are done with the activity lifecycle as well. We'll be going to the next thing called fragments. So what are fragments? So activities are typically heavy duty stuff. So activities are something like, I'll compare an activity to a jeep or a truck. See? So when you need to do heavy lifting, or when you need to do a lot of work, imbibe a lot of logic, etc., you'll be using activities. So what is a fragment? A fragment is something which is a lighter version of an activity, or say for example, you need to display too many elements on your screen. Take the Facebook app for instance. You'll be having 5 tabs in it. I think it's five. Wait, let me just check. 5 or 6 tabs. All right, let's check WhatsApp. It's easier. It has 3 tabs. So WhatsApp has 3 tabs, and it has to be pretty much very responsive in the way you switch between these tabs, and in the way you switch between these tabs, and shouldn't have occupy too much memory also. So this is where fragments come into play. You can see that the entire screen is not changed every time when you switch between tabs. Only parts of the screen is changed. So anything that is below the tab switcher is changed. So once you want to change something, sorry, once you want to change something that is not occupied the entire screen, you go for a fragment. For example, here in WhatsApp, I don't want to change the entire screen every single time. I just want to change the center panel of the screen, which is either display the chats, display the contacts, or display the call logs. So I'm not changing the entire screen. So I'm going to use fragments here because fragments are handy when you are trying to change only parts of the screen. The same goes for Facebook. Facebook, you switch between tabs, you don't change the entire screen at all. Whereas if you go to some other app, like say, what app is there? Say Google Chrome. Google Chrome will be changing the entire screen at all. Oh no, Google Chrome changes only the web view. Whatever. What other example can I give you? Instagram. Yeah, Instagram. Instagram. Oh no, Instagram has nothing in it. All right. Pretty much every app out there has fragments in it. What do I call? Is there any app which uses only activities? All right, take MX Player. In an MX Player screen, you'll be reloading every single page every single time. I mean, reloading the entire screen every single time. You'll be having multiple videos or whatever screens, and once you press the video thing, you'll be going into another activity which starts playing the video. So basically, you have multiple activities on the screen itself. So anything that changes the entire content of the screen, you'll be going for an activity. And if you want to change only part of the content and dynamically pass information between between these parts, you go for a fragment. Say in WhatsApp, it'll be much more. I mean, every fragment is actually controlled by an activity. So to display the entire screen, you use an activity, and to display the parts, you use a fragment. So in WhatsApp, the entire structure of the app is made by a single activity, and these three fragments, that is the call tabs, the call, the contacts, and the chats tab, will be controlled by fragments. So once I go to its contacts and click on it, it should take me to another page which will have the chat screen. So that chat screen itself is a different activity because it changes the entire screen. It doesn't change a part of the screen. So I hope I'm not confused you too much with fragments. We'll be seeing examples of fragments too soon. All right. Now we go to the what is called the manifest. What is a manifest? What's the official something about this manifest? So manifest is sometimes called the controller of the app. So let me show you a sample manifest. I'm going to screen share my sample application. As you can see, I have the sample application opens up with a single Java file, that is the single activity, and a single layout file for the activity. It has it has a simple thing called hello world. So as you can see on your left side, you can see something. There are different folders called the app and the Cradle script. Inside the app, you will be, Android Studio has separated into Java files and the REST files. REST, that is resources files, which will contain your layout, your other stuff. I'll come back to that soon. We go to the manifest now. So what is a manifest? A manifest will have the following content. So this is an allow backup. This is the manifest will have all the options about your application. Say once you install an application from the Play Store, it will list you the permissions required, the what are the features that an application uses, etc. So pretty much everything that you want to define about an application is here in this manifest. So if you want to tell what is the launcher icon on your application, you put it here as Android colon icon. If you want to define a theme for your application, you define it here. If you want to say that you should not allow backups of this application, you can put allow backup equal to false. So this remember, this is not an APK backup thing. It is for backing up data onto Google servers. So I suggest you leave it as it is. And then what is you will be using permissions like you might need to access data from the internet. So what do? You declare a permission here saying uses permission Android name Android permission. I'm going to use internet. So I'm going to search for I here it is, internet. So I've declared that I need internet permission here. So before once you install the app, it says this app needs the following permissions. You will agree internet. Say I want to access something else. Users permission. Say camera. 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 I can basically declare whatever permission that I want to. Here, internet. Say host location is something that your location taken by your mobile network, your find location. There are a lot of states here, and if you want to find out whether your application is connected to the internet, you can use the network state and Wi-Fi state permissions here. You can actually call, I mean, TV input, text service. There are a lot of stuff. If you want to use Bluetooth permission, Bluetooth stuff in your application, you should use Bluetooth. Body sensors. If you want to call a phone, if you want to call numbers which are chargeable, like international calls or STD calls or whatever, you should use call privilege, etc. So there is a lot of stuff here. I suggest you go through and find out what's needed for your application. So what else can be defined in a manifest? You can say compatible screens. You can list the screens that are compatible. You can just tell that my application is not compatible with screens which are less than 5.5 inch period. I don't want to define for anything, develop for anything else possible. If you want to say you use a feature called, for example, you need OpenGL on your application. Say you are building games, you want a graphical processor. So you say that I need a feature called OpenGLS, which should have the version number 2.0 or 2.1. I'm not sure. 2. The OpenGL version should be 2. In that case, you can define it in the manifest so that people don't install your application and find out that their phones don't support it and you get negative reviews in the too. So basically, you are avoiding people from installing your application because their phones doesn't support. So you can have permissions, permission group, lot of stuff is there. So inside the application, so all this inside manifest, you should be defining what are the permissions used, what are the features used, etc. And once you come into the application tab, you should be defining what other activities your application has. So if you don't do this, you'll be getting errors. So you should be defining activities. I'm sorry. Any questions so far? Okay. So you'll be defining what are the activities here, what an activity's name is, what is its parent, etc. So what is the parent of an activity? Once you click back on an activity, it should go to the previous screen. So in that case, it's a parent-child relationship. What is this intent filter? The intent filter is something that you can see this here. It is called the main and it's the launcher activity. So whatever activity is defined to be your launcher activity, you put this inside that. That is you define it to be a main activity and a launcher activity. Okay. All right. So that's it about the manifest. Basically, you define whatever is there in your application in the manifest. And if you're using other tools like the Google Maps SDK or other third-party libraries, they would ask you to define certain configuration stuff in the manifest, so that you can learn once you get to third-party applications. All right. Now we go to the biggest thing in writing. Biggest thing which has changed since Android Studio has come in. Gradle. So earlier we used to use Eclipse for development. So what was Eclipse? Eclipse had a Android plugin and we basically started building it as a typical Java application and the entire Eclipse environment was modified to suit Android development. But that sucked. So Google teamed up with IntelliJ and developed Android Studio. And in that process, they invented a new thing. I mean, they didn't invent exactly. They switched over to a new thing called Gradle. So as you can see, you'll be having something called the Gradle scripts here, and you'll be having 2 Gradle files minimum. So build.gradle will be 2. So build.gradle will exist for the entire project, and another one will exist for the application. So what is this top level build, right? You can add common configuration items. So my entire application is a project. So if I had too many libraries into it, all these libraries will come under this application, I mean this project. Okay. So Naresh asked what is an intent filter. So now I see. An intent filter is something which defines what activity to be called. So, for example, if someone presses the launch, I mean, if something comes to this application from the launcher menu. So, if some, I mean, if the user system detects a touch on the launcher's like adds icon from the launcher menu, it knows it has to call this application. But what activity in the application should be activated? In that case, once you define an intent filter here, this activity will catch anything that has the tag launcher. So any message that comes. Okay, well, I'll just tell you what an intent is and then come back here. So what is an intent? An intent is something that is used to pass messages between different activities in Android. So an intent is something that has. I mean, wait, give me a minute. I'll just gather my thoughts and then get back. Okay, so an intent is something that is used to pass messages between activities in Android. So the entire Android framework runs on intents. So once you click a button on, I mean, click the icon of the app on your phone, you will be finding that an intent will be launched, telling that this application has to be called. So once this application is called, I mean, assume that it comes onto this application thing. So it will scan all the activities in the application and finds out that this main activity has an intent filter telling that anything that comes from the launcher should go into the intent filter. So in that case, it will take it. I mean, it will grab that intent and use it. So you can have other intent filters like, for example, notifications. You get notifications on your Facebook, right? And once you click on that notification, it will directly take you to the page where it was existing. I mean, directly take you to the page. Say, Naresh commented on my post in Facebook. So if I click on that notification, it will directly take me to the post, I mean, concerned post. So what does that mean? It means that there is an activity called, I mean, some activity which has an interim filter telling that notification. So if I click on that notification, any call that comes from the notification to the application will be grabbed by that activity and taken to that screen. I hope I have answered your question, Naresh. And yes, we go to Gradle. So any library that you add into your application will be added here. I mean, that will be controlled by the top level Gradle script. I mean, one Gradle script for the project and one individual Gradle scripts for every other module. So this is the I mean, the build.gradle of the app module is what we are concerned about. So what is there in this Gradle? Gradle is typically a small JSON file in which you'll be having. So in Android, we are told that we are compiling the application for SDK 223, which is Marshmallow. So the maximum possible, I mean not maximum, it will be compiled with resources from the Marshmallow SDK. So any default items that include, say, you've seen Android default buttons, right? So if you use this SDK 23, the all the buttons in your application will have the look and feel of Marshmallow buttons. If you use a KitKat SDK, it will have the look and feel of KitKat buttons. And the application ID is your application's name, and the minimum SDK version and target SDK version or something like this, and version code. What is the code for? It is for okay. Version code is something that you use for your, I mean, version 1.0, 2.0, etc. And build types. So build types is something that you will be having two types of builds. One is a release build and a debug build. You run your app multiple times to check out whether it's working or not working. In that case, it's called a debug build. And once you're releasing it on the Play Store, you generate a newer type of build called a release build, which won't have any debugging information and it will be protected properly because to protect your code from being leaking. So dependencies. So dependencies here. Um, what is dependencies? Any library that you include in your application should have an entry in this dependency file. So you are telling that this module depends on so and so project for compiling properly. So what does this build.script build Gradle do? I mean, Gradle build.gradle do? There will be a Gradle daemon running in the background, which will read through every line of the script, and based on that, we'll build it. So you'll be having something called I mean, say if you put a dependency compile com.android.support.appcompat, etc. This is actually a support library which is used to support versions. I mean, it has this is a support library version 7 optimized for Android 23. So what does this mean? It means that once you include this in your application, I told you about the look and feel of marshmallow buttons, right? What will happen if your marshmallow buttons, I mean, if you run it on a device which runs KitKat, it don't have that button style. Your look and feel will be lost. So in that case, in order to prevent that, you will be including support libraries which will have all the definitions to work on in the older versions. So support libraries is used here. So that's the app compatibility library version 7. So there are a lot of support libraries published by Google, and there are a lot of third-party libraries also. I'll show you the script of my build script of my production level application, and we'll be saying the number of third parties that libraries that I'm using. I'll just open it in a normal file because I don't want to open here. Oh, dot gradle. So one second, I'll just show you that. So you can see it here, the dependencies that I'm using here. So I used a lot of libraries here: library view pager, conversion tracking SDK, crash SDK, JW player. I use support, app compact, etc. So this is pretty big. My older version had a lot of stuff. I removed a lot of libraries here. So I think you get the picture. So what happens if I change something in the Gradle file? I'll give a sample. So I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to put a new space here. It'll say that Gradle files are changed. So what does it mean? It assumes that something has added some library or something here. So I'm going to sync it now. So you can see what happens in the Gradle console. So basically what will Gradle do is you just mention the names of the libraries in your Gradle file. It will find it from a place called Maven Central, which is a cloud repository, and download all those required files for those projects. So if you change anything in your Gradle file, it will typically recheck everything that is there on your local disk and that is there on Maven Central. And if it is up to date, it won't download anything. You can see that it's up to date here. If it is not up to date, it will download stuff. Any questions regarding Gradle? I'll just hold for a minute because Gradle is pretty important once you start doing stuff. No, Naresh, whatever you define in the build Gradle script is what is going to work in your application. Once whatever you start, I mean the values that you gave earlier when you're creating the project is all that is defined here. So I gave the name hello world.sample here. So that's what has come as the application ID. I gave the minimum SDK version as 15 and that's what has come here. So basically this build script will be created once you start the project. It will be generated automatically by whatever values you have given. And if you change it now, it's not going to affect your project in any case. It will just say it will resync the build and start over again. I'll just change the application minimum SDK version to 16. It'll say it has to sync again. And you can see it here in the Gradle console. And it has built it successfully. So there's no big change here. You can change whatever you want in your Gradle file as long as it matches the syntax. Okay, I guess that is it about Gradle questions. Before we go on to the next topics of Logcat debugging and advanced, I want to make a small app, uh, say which has a login screen and and another screen in which it just says displays whatever email ID and name that password that they're given. So we'll build a small app, and I'll be able to explain to you what logcat is, how to debug the logcat, how to read a logcat, how to store it locally. I'll be combining all of this into this local storage and passing data between activities. So the ones in bold is what I'm going to be covering now using a sample application, and then we'll go on to the passing. We'll go on to the connection to a server. I'll just give you a sample script. I don't have a receiver ready, so I think will be able to use it. And then I'll just give a small overview of what a recycler view and card view is, and how to use third-party libraries. And in the end, we'll be having version control. I hope that's fine. Any questions so far? I'll just hold for a minute. If you have any questions, please ping now, because we're going to start doing stuff now. Questions and feedback is appreciated. You want me to slow down or something? I see there are 15 people watching, and sorry, 10. Only Naresh has come with questions so far. As everyone's left off. Okay, I'll wait for another minute. Should I wait or go ahead? Please respond to that at least. Deepika, they actually, yes, that's a good question. Intent filters, basically, they don't redirect between activities. They don't navigate between activities at all. So, what intent filters are used is they are used to inform the system which activity to call if a particular condition is met. Say within the app, once you come into the application, the intent filters do not matter at all. Once you're outside of the application, say inside the system, I mean, one second, Deepika has a question, I'm answering that. Okay. They don't they don't redirect, navigate between activities. Once you're inside the application, whatever you put in the intent filters do not matter at all. Once you're outside the application, that's when it matters. So once you click a icon on the login screen, I mean on your launcher screen, what activity to be called. The Android system does not know which activity to be called. So in that case, you need to mention an intent filter telling that call this activity if it is clicked from the launcher. So we have something called a notification intent filter. So this will be called if there is a notification, etc. I hope I answered your question. Okay. We are now going to start building a small application which will have only two fields, login and password field. I'm going to set a background for it. I'm going to style the button also. Let's make it look something nice. And we'll also use it to store it in the local. I'll tell you how to store it in the local storage, and I'll also tell you how to pass it directly onto the other activity without storing. All right. And I'll make some obvious mistakes in the app so that you can easily find out that there's something wrong. I mean, I can easily show you errors in the logcat. So without much further ado, here we go. Oops, I seem to have lost the application. Where did I store it? I seem to have lost the app source directory. Project is here. Where is it? Downloads your sample data. Okay. So, I don't want to show you my download screen. Sample. All that is ready. There you go. So I'm going to build the layout first. So I'm going to move to the layout screen, and this is what I see. So there are two ways to build a layout. You can either drag and drop stuff from here, or you can go and type the text here. So basically, whatever you drag and drop will also be auto generated here. So I'm going to be a bit lazy. First, I don't want this hello world text. I'm deleting it. Next, what I want is a small text box. Edit text. So it's called an edit text in Android. Here it is. It's called a plain text. So I'm just putting it here, and I want it to occupy the entire screen. This thing is not this way. Doing it in this way. Okay. Uh, here I have something called an edit text here, and I want another password field. So I'm putting a password below that, and I'm dragging it over here. Okay. So I have two boxes, and another thing that I need is a button. So button, yes, here it is, button. I'm going to make it center, and I have a button. So is there anything else that you need on login screen? Not. So hopefully no questions so far. Alright. Now we go under the hood, find out what's happening. I click on the text, and I just added three elements, and here you can see so many stuff that has been added. So what is this? This is an edit text, that is the email thing. Every element should in this should have a layout width, the width of the layout and the height of it. Wrap content is something that it should adapt to the length of the content. Is what wrap content means. So wrap content is, if I type a longer email, it should adapt to the longer email size. If I type a shorter one, it should adapt to the content size. And ID is something that I'm going to define for it, because you need to refer this in your Java file to get data from it. So I'm going to make this ID as edit email. So I'm just going to make it email. So I'm going to type email here. So, so you should be giving hints to it. So I'm going to type Android in. I'm going to type email. So as you saw earlier, the boxes that we saw were full of just white boxes. I didn't know, you don't know what to do there. So I just given a hint saying email. So that'll be easier for the user who's using the app to find out that he has to type the email over there. Here. So, oh, I missed the types of layouts. I'm sorry. So, just fix this bug. So there are multiple types of layouts. Some of them are relative layout. You will have your linear layout. You can see them here. Frame layout, linear layout, table layout, grid layout, relative layout, etc. So what are these layouts and how to use them? So frame layout is something that is basically detached. Say you want to build an application which has a very large world. Say a game. You're making a game. For instance, let's take an infinite world game. Okay, okay. A frame layout is used when you don't want to restrict the size of the screen or something that goes full screen, etc. And linear layout, there are two types of linear layout: horizontal and vertical. If you put a linear layout horizontal, every element on the layout will be stacked. I mean, one above the other or side by side. So if you want elements in a linear fashion, you go for linear or a horizontal layout. And a table layout, you obviously know what a table is. If you want to show elements in a table layout, say for example your gallery, you can use a table layout. And a table row is something that a single row in a table will constitute a table row. A grid layout is, I mean, there's a difference between the table and a grid. So a grid can have elements of multiple sizes. Think of a photo grid, for example. You can have different size photos in it. And in a table layout, all the cells will be of the same size. So what is a relative layout? A relative layout is just the position. You can see the hint there. Layout is where the positions of, you just define the position of one element based on the position of the other element. So I can just tell that put this password box below the email box. So that's what has been done here. You can see this here. I've just told Android colon layout below email. So I just asked it to put this password below email. So I'm going to name this as password box. Password. And this button should be below the password field. And I'm going to name this button as OK button or login button. I'll just call it login. And the text on the button is going to be login. You can see the changes here. And if I want a hint, you can give a hint. Android colon hint password. And here it is. Email password login. So this is a very basic page that I've created to display both the elements and related layout to. Alright. I'm going to make another layout which is going to display whatever we got here. So new layout. I'm going to name the layout as display. So this is the display layout that is here. And in the display, this is a linear layout. So default layout that I use is linear layout. So I'm just going to put a text view. Text view is something which just displays stuff. I'm going to wrap content. And the text that I'm going to use as a placeholder is email ID. Interrupt me anytime if you don't follow this. Yes, Madangi, if I use a relative layout and drag and drop properly, all the code that you saw there were auto-generated layout below. You just have to adjust it in a way that that is properly matched for it to come properly. Blabbering something. Okay, yeah, it does generate layout below code. If you put it properly in a say a character, it's what are the character layout below no row. If you don't do it properly, it will just make it as a relative to something else. Okay, I hope you understood. Right. So the text is going to be email ID. You can see that I put email ID here. The font looks too small. I'm going to make it bigger. Android colon text size. So text in Android is measured in terms of scale independent pixels or SP as it is known. So SP, I'm going to make it 30 SP. Now it's big enough. I don't like the color. How do I change the color? Android color text color. Text color, I'm going to make the color. You should be making colors in hex code format. So any color that you put should have the hexadecimal code format. And I'm going to make color as. So I know a lot of color codes lately for. So 6 zeros is black. If you want to make some other color, you can put it there. Say I'll make the next one blue. So I'm going to define an ID for this, and I call an ID equals plus ID. What shall I text view display or email display? I'm going to call it email display. Now I'm going to drag another text view. Let's see how it's generated now. I'm going to drag a text view and put it below this email. Oh, sorry, this is a linear layout. You cannot define stuff to come in relative to another. So if I put a text view now, and see what happens. The text view will come below this by default, but it will not be related to this. So you can see it here. There's no layout below. What if I try layout below? Android colon layout below. You have an error saying that invalid layout parameters in a linear layout. You cannot use layout below in a linear layout because stuff will everything will be stacked one after another. You can see that the orientation is vertical of the linear layout is vertical. So anything that is, I mean, everything will be stacked vertically. I'm going to call this as password, and the ID that I'm going to use is password display. And I'm going to use another color here. I'm going to call it text color. 06. It's a blue, and the size is too small again. Text size 40. Okay, so I've basically built the UI for the two screens that my app has. Now I'm going to go to the Java code. So I'm going to the Java main activity. So the main activity by default has an on create, and this is the bundle that I was talking about earlier. It searches for a cached copy, and if it has a cache copy, it calls the superior activity. Super is basically the activity from which it was derived. So you will be learning all that once you learn Java. It's when I started Android, I didn't know Java too, so I just went on with the flow and then learned all these concepts later. So I think you will also be able to do this. So I set the content view as activity main. So this is the first thing that I should do. Once I create, I should set it as. So now I'm going to define buttons. It is better to define your buttons and all the elements that you're using in your app outside of your functions, because once you only one when you define it outside your function, you will be able to use it everywhere in your activity, or else you need to I mean it's called the, I forgot the name, it's a very primitive program, access specifiers, scope resolution. If you define a variable inside a function, you can access it only within a function. If you define it in a class, you can access it anywhere in the class. So button, I'm going to define a button here, button. You can see that it is telling an error. So android.widget.button is not imported. So if I press alt and enter, it will say should I import the class, and then the class will be imported. So you don't need to remember every import statement because Android Studio does it for you. So I'm going to call this login button. What else did I have? I had a text view. Sorry, edit text. Edit text. And the edit text name, I had two edit text, so I'm going to call email text. And another one was comma password text. So these are just variables that I've created. Now I need to tell the system that what variable points to what. So login button points to, you have to change it to button. So it's a button. You are going to find view by ID. So you're going to find an element in the view using its ID. What was the ID of the button that I gave? r.id.login. So any ID that you give should be prefixed by the letters r.id. So I'll come back to the R class once you have started building the application. Login button. I have defined what the login button is. I need to define what the email text is. So it is an edit text. And I can find it in the view with this ID r.id.email. And the password text, interrupt me with questions if you have any. Just text find view by ID r.id.password. No question so far. So I have defined what these button elements do. And okay, so what else do I need? I should tell the Android app to go to the display screen once I click the button. So I hope you understood it. If once I have typed stuff and I click the button, I should go to the next page. How do I do it? Button, login button, dot set on click listener. Do on click listener So I'm going to listen for clicks on the button. So any touch that I do on the button is going to be click. So once I click this, what should I do? I should get the string. So I'm going to store it in a string. String email. What should I do? Email text dot get text. I'm going to get the text of whatever was there in this email. Get text. And I'm going to convert it into a string. So to string. So whatever was there in the email ID box, I'm going to get that text, convert it into a string, and store it in the email. String password equal to password text dot get text. So you can see that coding for Android is pretty very easy because once you start typing, Android Studio gives you suggestions. So I got both of these. What should I do? I am going to tell you now. So we'll just keep with both of these. I'm going to log it in a. We can now debug whether our application actually works. So I'm going to log this in a screen. So I want to know whether I've got the email ID and password correctly from the user. So how do I do that without displaying it on the screen? I'm going to put it in the log view. Log cat. I'm going to log this log dot. So there are a lot of log messages here. You can use D for debug, log.e for error, and I for information, etc. So depending, or W for warning, or V for verbose, etc. So typically this I, D, W, E will all come into play once you write production level messages, production level applications. Say you want to warn the, these logs will not be visible to the user, it will be visible only to the system and and in case of crashes, it will be mailed to you. So you can define levels of logs here. So if I put W, it means it's a warning log. If I put E, it's an error. So error messages, I should log it with log.e. I should put warning with log.w. I should put information with log.i. So what I'm storing is information. So log.i, what am I storing? I should first call it something. I'm going to call it email. I'm going to call this email and associate email with this. So I'm going to store the value of the string email with the name email. And I'm going to log another thing, log.i, password, and password. So give me a minute while I connect my phone. It's always a good practice to use a phone without using this figure. I'm just connecting my phone here. Try avoiding using the emulator because the emulator sucks big time and it's also very slow. You have to enable the USB debugging. Just switch it off. I'm going without a wireless here, so I need to type few commands. Debugging on. Simply ignore this, or if you want to know more about this, you can ping me in private. I'm going wireless here, so I'm connecting it over the internet. So far, any questions? I'll just hold for a minute before running the app. Or if I can go on, please type it in. It's 29 already. Log.i statement. Yes, a log statement is something that will write the message onto the logs. So logs are some, I hope you know what logs are. Logs are information ledgers. Whatever happened in an application will be stored in a log. I'll be able to show more detail about the log.i. What are the different types of logs? Once I start running the application, you'll be able to see why I was talking about information, warning, error, debug messages. So I just suggest you hold for a minute. So logs basically you associate some, you call it something and store something here. So I call it an email and store the email value in the log. So it will basically write it onto the log telling that email, this is the value. Alright. Any other questions, or should I go on? Madangi, I hope I answered your question. 10 years, 11. Alright, I'll give you all a minute. I'll check on my messages. Please answer, go on if I can go on. Can I go on? Okay. So I'm going to run this on my phone. This. So once I click, I think you got the action. This is the run button. I click on run. Say choose a device. And I won't be able to show you what's there on my screen. Hopefully, I'll just give you. You can see that the Gradle build is running here, and it's about. If you want to see the status, you can see the status. Where's the run tab? Where do you see the status? The run tab is here. You see that it has installed the APK, and it's installing the APK right now on my phone. Device command pm install. So it has asked the Android system to install this application. And once that installation is done, it will ask it to start the activity. So successfully installed. And once I have installed it, you can see that on the Android monitor tab, you'll be having something called the logcat. The logcat will have all sorts of information here. And now here you go. Log level, verbose, debug, info, warn, error, and assert. So if I put log.v, verbose will have everything, every log that is created by this application. And log level D will have debug messages. If I put only log.d messages will be shown when I click this. Button, debug option. If I put information filter, I can see only log.i messages. Log.w will be seen only if I put, only those will be seen if I put warning, error, assert, etc. So you can see that the error messages are logged in red. So typically what I usually do is I put every message as log.error so that I can easily find out whatever is happening instead of combing through all this garbage. So all this is created by the Android operating system. Okay, so I'm going to type the email now. I'm typing my email ID and my password. So this is not my password. I just type my phone number as my password. And now I'm going to create the. I'm going to press the login button. If I press the login button, you can see that this lines. My email ID has been captured properly. My password also has been captured properly. You can see that in plain text. Can everyone get what has happened? If yes, someone please reply. If no, please someone reply. This is weird, man. I have no idea if you guys are listening or sleeping. Someone reply. You can also see the memory used by the application here. I've used 8. Out of 8 MB that is allocated, I've used 3 MB. CPU usage of the app, GPU usage of the app, network use of the app, etc. Any questions? If no questions, please tell. Naresh didn't get it. So Naresh, you saw the code here, right? On click of the login button, I have got the text from the email ID box and the password from the password box, and I logged it using the I tag as email ID and email, password and password. So once I type those information on my PC, on my laptop, on my phone, and click the login button, it has been logged on to this as here. I'll demonstrate it again. When you try this, the app has crashed. Matangi, I'd be needing what exact the log cat output so that I can tell you what exactly happened. I'm going to type this again. You guys can follow it to see the changes. I'm going to type my other ID at acm.org, and password I'm going to type some nonsense and login. You can see that the email ID and the password has changed. Arrest, did that answer your question? So whatever basically I'm typing, I have logged it onto this locket. You will be getting to know why I'm keeping on repeating this locket thing, because once you get to do networking operations, you need to know what is the data that you're getting from the server, and you cannot. And often when you're doing networking applications which communicate with the server, your application will crash randomly. So to debug this, the only way is to have it on the logcat, and it's not a good practice to display all the information to the user. So that's why you have the logcat to log all the information and see. So Naresh has got us out. Matangi, I can answer it if you give me the logcat. Alright, next. Okay, the application has not moved to any screen so far. I'm just used one screen. So I have to display it on my display screen. Okay, so how do I do that? I'm going to go to this main act. I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to create new Java class. I'm going to call this the display class. So public class display has been called. I'm going to extend the app compat activity here. Instead of typing this manually, you can just right click here, new activity, blank activity. I'm going to create, doing this will create everything perfectly, but I want to make an obvious error here so that I can demonstrate how to debug some small errors, common errors. So I'm just going to copy paste this thing. So basically I have a simple layout here. So I'm going to set this as display.xml. So r.layout.display. I'm going to display it here, and what are the elements that I had in display? I'll just erase it here. Elements that I had in display were, I had two text views. One was called the email display and one was called the password display. So I'm going to define two text views. Text view, email display, email disk, and password disk. And I'm going to assign values to this. Email disk is equal to, I'm going to convert it into a text view, find it in the view with this id r.id. Email display, and password disk, you can find it in the text view, in view by id, and put that equal to here. Questions, please stop me as soon as possible if you have any questions. Alright, so I've just sent it here. So I'm going to show you two ways in which, so now I first have to transfer control onto this display class. So how do I transfer control and when do I transfer control? So to transfer control, first I should transfer control onto this display class once I click the login button. I hope you all understand that. And how do I transfer this control? In order to, as I told you earlier, intents are used for conversation between activities or passing messages between activities. So I'm going to create an intent in the onClick button method, intent. I'm just going to call it intent. So I'm going to create a new intent, and from where to where? I'm going to call this intent from main activity dot this, from this instance of the main activity to a display dot class. So display class I've created an intent. Uh, do you understand this, guys? Do you understand it? Much better if I could mirror my screen on this laptop. How do I do a screen mirroring? Yeah, I'll just give you a minute for asking any doubts, so I'll figure out how to screen mirror. Should I just run an emulator and be done with it? Yeah, for Matangi just told yeah for something. All right, I couldn't figure it out. I'll just run an emulator then. Will take a bit. Not run an emulator in a long time. So I'll create a new emulator. Nexus 5, X, Nexus 6, 60, Nexus 1, does it have 1 plus 1? So I'll just go with the Nexus 5. Let it run Marshmallow. Yeah, 0 Marshmallow. Let it go with the full API. 5.1 full APIs. Okay, finish. Okay, you will understand about it. I'm just starting an emulator here so that I'll be able to see what's and tell you. Okay, I've created a new intent here. I have to start this intent. So I'm going to start system shit, activity, and I'm going to pass this intent onto it. So once I do this, the control will be transferred from the intent from this main activity to the display activity. Okay, the AVD, the emulator is now firing up. Hope it works properly. Yeah. Sorry, people, I'm wasting your time. What the hell? Where did this stop? Run it on an emulator, you damn it. Runs this emulator. Not running. Running idea or not? Running you damn. Okay. I think build is running already. So file system is already nothing to do. User data. Yes. He is able to see the emulator. Or I think I should refocus it onto the emulator. The emulator is booted up. I mean, it's still booting up. What the hell? How's it coming for you guys first and then for me? Come on, boot up. This is why I hate using emulators. They suck. They don't boot up so fast. There's another emulator called the Genie Motion emulator, which is faster. And Android Studio 2.0 is coming out with a huge bump up for emulator speed and a lot of new features. And you'll be enjoying using it if you learn properly. Come on, boot up, boot up, boot up. Yeah, I think we use this question time for any questions that you have. Emulator has booted up. I'm going to type the email ID. I'll just mirror my entire screen. I think that will make more sense if because I'll be jumping between the code and the password is 12345 6 and I click login. See, the app has crashed. And hence I open the logcat here. You can see that the email has been logged, the password has been logged. And what has happened here? A fatal exception, activity not found exception. And if you read this, you'll be able. It is pretty decent. I mean, it is a pretty detailed explanation. Unable to find the activity class sample.display. Have you declared this activity in your Android manifest? That is the question that uh, that is the error that has occurred. I have not declared the activity in my manifest, and it also shows the line in which the error. Let's see, main activity.java on click the 29th line. So 29th line, what is the 29th line? It's a start activity. So I have forgotten to declare my activity here. That's the error. So if I had created the activity using the right click panning create new activity கொடுத்திருந்தா, it would have been done here automatically. It automatically comes here. I didn't want to do that. So I want to showcase this in 2 ways. So I'll just go back to sharing the code screen. So I'm going to declare the activity here. So it is display, and that's it. So the single line of code caused the application to crash. Not doing the single line of code. So once again I run it on the emulator. I will share the entire screen again. So I'll open the logcat window also. So I'm going to type click on login, and you can see that the data has been logged. The data has been logged here, but it does not display it. Why? Because I didn't write any code to display the data on the screen. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to go to this display. I'm going to send the data from one activity to the another. How do I do that? There are multiple ways to do that. I'm going to show you 2 ways. One is by using the intents itself, and the other way is to use a local storage as I highlighted before. So debugging an app, you just need to see the logcat and it will tell you errors, whatever errors is there. So debugging, and you Google for that error, and you'll be finding the answer on Stack Overflow, which will be pretty simple. So read the logcat properly, find out what the exception or what error, Google that exception. That's the best advice that I can give you. For 2 years of Android development, and I have learned that properly. So I'm going to put this into intent itself. So intent dot put extra. So I'm going to put extras in this intent. I'm going to call all these values are key value pairs. So I'm going to name it something and give a value similar to the log.ic. So I'm going to call it email and put the email value there. Similarly, I'm going to put the password value. Intent.put extra password, and I'm going to put the password. So in the display activity, I'm going to get the value. So what should I do now first? I should get the intent first. I'm getting whatever intent has been used to call this here. So I should get all the get both the string email, email ID. I'm getting whatever intent was used to call this, and from that intent, I'm going to get extra whatever string which has the name email, and I'm going to call interrupt me with questions if you have any Q&A happening for me. Any questions, please? Password equal to get intent or get string extra password. So I'm getting the password also, and now all that's left is to put this on the screen. So email this dot set text of email. So that's the text, set this as text, password list of text password. So that's it. Now I'll run the app and show you what has changed. Back to the explaining what put text orders. 1 second, RMG. I'll just display. Okay, I'll just tell it off. So put extra. The intents are basically stuff that are used to transfer data onto the communicate between activities. So once you use a put extra value, you'll be adding data onto the intent. So you can basically send anything along an intent, and you have to use a put extra because intent is consider an intent as a container. It'll have basic. It'll have some predefined values. You can add whatever you want onto the container. So I'm going to put an extra string onto the intent, telling, hey, its name is email and its value is this, and another password. And for the password, I'm going to add another value called password, naming it password and giving the password value. I hope I didn't mess up. Page and share with. Okay. So I open the logcat also. And, so I'm going to call clicking on login. See that the values have been logged, and here. So the emulator has managed to display the values whatever I have typed. So any questions? Stop this inception thing. And put it back here. So I'll just wait for a minute for questions and then go ahead with local data storage. This is how intents work. So you can basically send anything along with an intent. It need not be just a string. If you put extra of something else, I have sent strings here, so I've used get string extra. If I put a boolean value, I'll get boolean extra. If I put an integer value, I'll get integer extra. Waiting for questions. If you don't have any, just give me a green signal to go ahead. I'm waiting for questions. If nothing, please give me a indication. I'll take the meantime to explain to some of this. Guys, have you all slept off or have you all left? There are 9 viewers now. Waiting. Green signal from Naresh. Alright, I'll just go on with the local data storage in a minute. I'll get some water and come. And okay, I'll start with local data storage. So the data storage that I'm going to be using now for local storage is shared preferences. So shared preferences is something similar. Basically, anything in Android will be a name value pair. So you name something, give a value for it, and store it. That's it. So shared preferences, you'll be using something called the shared preference. That is a local memory for every application, and that is, I mean, it is not allocated for every application. It is basically allocated for all the applications, and there will be keys associated with it. Say it is basically in your internal memory only. The data, I mean, once you go to the settings page of an app, you'll be seeing data. The data value is due to the shared preferences part. Phone has stopped working. I can't type this now. Take care of it later. Alright. So I'm going to comment out this intense extra parts, and we are going to use shared preferences instead. So I'm back to the main activity, and I'm going to create a new shared preferences here. So shared preferences, I'm going to call it SP, and I'm going to instantiate it here SP. I'm going to create shared preferences. I'm going to call this as give me a minute. I forgot this instantiation. I'll just refer my documentation. Could I forget this? Get default shared. Not get shared preferences. It is get default shared preferences. The preference manager preference preference manager dot get default shared preferences of this. So I'm going to get the default shared preferences of this activity. I mean of this application. So shared preferences is basically a data store. So in order to edit the data store, I should be having an editor object. So to use this editor, I just type editor, it automatically corrected edit equals sp dot edit. So this editor will be having the ability to edit the shared preference. As I said, I have to declare it outside. condition get. Any questions so far? Didn't take the questions for a long time. So I'm using this editor. I just shut down and close a lot of windows. So I have edited this and I'm going to put all this here. So editor dot put string also value email. The name is email, value is email, and editor dot put string password. You can basically store anything in it, not just strings, any data, boolean, int, etc. So editor, it will be putting all this in an editor. Once I'm done with it, I should use editor dot apply. So apply will tell that hey, I've done editing this tab preferences. You can store it properly. Just done it here, and here in the display, I'm going to take this from in. So instead of getting it from the intent, and we're just going to comment out these two names, right? String email equals. So first I should declare the shared preferences. So shared preferences SP. So SP equals preference manager preference manager preference and add values. Get default for this. And I'm just going to read data, not edit. So I'm not creating an edit object here. sp.get string. So any string that has an called email. And in order to prevent from data not being prevent data that is not there being accessed, you should apply default value. You might, I mean, this is to protect against certain cases. Say you might have a display picture. Some people won't have a display picture. So in that case, you should also guard against null values. So that's why I'm supplying default values here. So I'm going to put the default value as empty. You put whatever value in default. Depends on your application. And string password is the same. sp.getString. That's the key password. And in case it has nothing, I'm just going to put empty. So now we'll just test this application on the emulator. I'll just any questions, please ping right now. I'll show you one more way, which is a very lazy way, which I like a lot, of sharing data between applications. It is not actually the right way, but I like it. So I'll open the see, email and password has been written, and it has got the value from the shared preferences. Have you got it? Or I'll just now show you another demo. What will happen if I get it? If I don't give a value. I'm going to give. I'm just going to click login. Hey. Oh, yeah. As you can see that it is empty because the empty string itself is a value. It is not a value which is not existing, but it is empty. So you should also take care of conditions like this before calling an intent, or your app will crash or something. So in my main activity, I should check for value existing before calling this intent. So it can be done very simply. So if email dot length, you can check for the length is greater than 0 and password length is greater than 0, you just pass this, or else you don't do anything. So some validation like this can be done also. So now coming to the lazy thing, I'll comment out editor also, share preferences code also. I'll show you what the laziest way to pass data is. Please do not use it anywhere unless you have to. I'm going to create a class, new Java class called constant. Spelling is wrong. So it should be constant. I just delete it and type it again. So new Java class called constants, and it's going to have two values. So public static in, public static string email, give an empty string for initialization, and public static string password. So good thing about using chat preferences is chat preferences values will be stored in the application as long as it is not uninstalled. So even if you keep switching between apps, the value will be stored in the chat preferences itself. You can use it anytime. Whereas when you use intents to pass data, it will be available only for the current session. If you use this trick that I tell you, it will be available for one way that thing only. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assign values to this. So instead of having constants dot email equals email, constants dot password equals password. I'm just going to assign values to that constant class, and while displaying, I'm going to just display as constants dot email. I'm going to display constants dot password. And if you use this application, use this code anywhere and get caught, do not tell me. Any questions, please ask me ASAP. So just as my emulator. Close the emulator. So it will take another half an hour for it to boot up, come back online. Emulator is coming, I guess. The emulator is back on. Unlock. I'm going to run it on the emulator, and it has come. So, I ran it again. I'm typing random stuff. While I came, the same thing. This is happening because I just used to pass value, used a class as a storage to temporary storage to pass values. Do not use this. This is not proper practice. I'm just telling you for a daily thing. Yes, I'm doing that. Okay. And then what else do we have? I will switch it back to this. The key, yes, I'm coming back to sharp preferences. I'll just undo the changes here. Okay, chat preferences. So chat preferences are basically the internal storage of your Android device. So every application will have a chat preferences storage for it, and only the in activities in that application will be able to use it. So I am declaring chat preferences SP in order to read chat preferences and an editor to edit it. So editor. So SP equal to I'm getting from the preference manager and getting the default chat preferences. Or I can also use another initialization method called chat preferences of. You can give a name, and he is calling it name, and this will also work. Alright, check this. You can use this preference manager or get default chat preferences in order to get the default chat preferences for this, and use the editor to create an editable object to make it editable. And I can put whatever values I want onto the chat preferences, like editor dot. I can put a boolean value, I can put a float value, I can put an integer, I can put a long, I can put a set of strings, I can remove strings from it. I can, so there's a lot of stuff that I can do with this. I'm just putting strings into it. So I'm going to put a string called email and put another string called password. And once I've done putting values into it, I have to ask it to apply. And once it's done, on the display side, I'm getting the same chat preferences again. I'm not making an editor object for it because I'm not going to edit it anything here. I'm just getting the strings from it. Get strings with the tag email. Any string that has the name email will be stored here. If there's no string called email, I'm just passing the value empty. So this is just to prevent against invalid data operations. So this the same goes for password, and then I'm displaying it. Any questions? They answer it. There are a lot of other methods like using the inbuilt SQLite database, but I prefer this method because SQLite is too big to handle and you won't need it. I mean, you have to write SQL queries to get data and put data, etc. It's pretty irritating. Any questions? Holding for answers questions, or else you can move on to the next topic, which is server connections. I'll just give you an overview of how to connect to a server and an advanced view methods and how basic third-party libraries, and then we can wrap it up. Waiting for questions. If there's no questions, please let me know. Guys, the response please. Can I go on with server connection? Some sort of response would do. படுத்தாதீங்கடா கிளாஸ்ல தான் பதில் சொல்ல மாட்டேங்க இங்கேயுமாடா. அப்பா ரிப்ளை பண்ணிட்டான் வருவடா தம்பி. Okay, now we are going to the connection server connection part. I don't have a server right now up and running which can get all these values. So I'm just going to show you how the transmit means data is sent and received. So basically, you can see that whatever values that I mean, whatever that I'm going to send from an Android device onto a server, any communication that takes place between your app and your client part, I mean server part, is going to take place with the help of something called JSON. A JSON is a Java string object notation, and it is also a key value pair here. So on the screen, whatever you see is a JSON, which is actual JSON API from the server of my startup company that I work for. And basically, this is a description about the Basha movie of Rajni. So what does it have? The first line is the ID, anything that is inside the double quotes, the first two values, anything that is to the left of the colon is the key, and whatever is to the right is the value. So it's a key value pair, which is a collection of data. So the ID is 1418, and the name is Basha. The description, Monica, auto driver, etc. And you can see in the case of a director, it's a nested JSON. It has another two values inside the directory itself. So in JSON, you can have something like that also. So you can have a JSON within a JSON. So that's what happens in the case of director. If you see the actors part, you can see that there is a square bracket here. What does it mean? The square bracket has one JSON inside it. This has Rajnikant in it. What if there is one more actor called Kamal Hassan in it? So I'll be calling this as, so there'll be another ID2 with a name as Kamal Hassan. Basal variant. So this is basically an array of JSON values. So anything with a square bracket is an array of JSON values, which can have multiple JSONs inside it. And everything else is pretty much the same, the thumbnail, URL, everything. So you can see proper another JSON inside the logs, duration, resume, etc. So the reason why I'm showing you this JSON value is, once you communicate with the server, your application should build a JSON similar to this. So I'm going to write a new JSON for how the JSON that our server, I mean the app will generate. It's just a basic JSON. We have only two fields: email ID and password. So email ID will be server and comma password. Password will be. So this is how the JSON that is generated by your application will look. So this JSON value, you should write a receiver on the server side to get the values from this. I mean, to parse this JSON. I mean, read this JSON and get the values alone, and then it should be able to send a response telling, okay, hey, I got this or something like that. So I'm running a search. Okay, so that's how you do this. And so how do you send a response? I mean, how do you send a request to the server? As you see, I think you all know about what threads are and what processors are. Everything that you see on the Android screen runs on something called the UI thread. So all your activities, they basically run on the user interface thread, and the user interface thread is what is the major thread in Android. So you'll be having another. You should not do any network intensive or computational intensive process on the UI thread, because it will cause lags or slow down your application itself. So say if Facebook does everything on your this itself, I mean, what if Facebook loads the entire newsfeed using their UI thread itself, then you will not be able to use Facebook properly at all, because you could have seen it yourself with your own eyes. Because once you're loading Facebook, the images will load later. You can still scroll on to see the text, whereas the image will load later, because that's because the loading part etc goes on the background thread. Android will not let you run an application which has network access on the main thread. So how do you do this? You use something called an async task. An asynchronous task is something. So in the async task, you'll be calling the data from the URL on the background thread, and I'll show you an example. I have a GitHub gist. I cannot implement it right now because I don't have a server. Or maybe I can wait. I create a request bin. Request bin is an URL which is, it's a website which can be used as a capture point for your. It will have a generator name. So I'm going to use this script. I'm not going to type this URL, code again. I already have this code here. I'm just going to copy paste this code onto the sample application. So in my display screen, I'm going to create a new class here inside my folder class. Okay, I think I'll better off with typing it from scratch. Yeah, just clean this up. Okay, see. So I'm going to create a new class. I'm going to call it as send to server. Send to server. It should extend something called the async task. So async task will have the parameters, progress and result. So those are the values. I'm not going to pass any parameters to it. I'm calling it void. I'm not going to have anything. I'm just making a simple async task. So I'm giving everything as void, and it will tell there's an error. So I'm just press Alt Enter. It will implement this do in background method. So do in background method is where all the actual work is being done. It will do this, sending this data part in the background script. So I'm going to have a string called URL equals. I'm going to copy paste the URL from the request bin that I created. So this should be your server's URL. So request bin URL profile, and then I'll delete this. So I'm going to create a HTTP. You can use either HTTP GET or HTTP POST. I'll use HTTP POST. I'll use HTTP GET. Hey, 1 second. Okay. This HTTP POST and GET method has been overridden. It has been made archaic or outdated in the latest version of Android, that is Marshmallow. I'm going to use a workaround for it. Looks library for Apache.http. I think this is right. I'll just check it up once again. Please interrupt me. I know you'll be having a lot of doubts now. Unless you have slept off. You haven't slept off. On org.apache.http.net. This is something that I found. I'm going to sync this Gradle project and then I'm going to start it. Only if the sync completes, I'll be able to use it. So come on guys, I need questions. I'm importing this class HTTP get of URL. So I'm going to pass this URL and ask it to make a HTTP get. And then I'm now creating a HTTP client which will be able to get the values, whatever response is returned from the URL. So new default HTTP client. I'm going to create the new default HTTP client, and you don't need to set any header or something. You just need to get the responses. So I'll just use this. No sense to type again. Using Alt Enter to So I have another string called JSON. So you can see that this throws an exception. So I should put our entire thing in a try catch flag. So I'm going to try this or catch with an exception. Presence. So how do I call this? I call this as send to server dot execute. So I'm creating a new send to server dot execute is how you call it. Just now. Yeah, so I'm calling it this way. So when I run this application on the emulator, I can show you the request bin. Meetingla. So wait a second. I become so dumb. Not sent any data at all. How did I become so dumb? I didn't send any data at all now. I just created a basic URL thing and I will just show you how to send data in a minute. So I have not sent any data, I just created an object which can communicate with the URL. So in order to send data, I should be able to add parameters. So basic name value pair is something that I'm going to use. I'm going to use a list of basic name value pairs called params. New list of so going to make a new array list. Yes, params will be different. I'm calling it params. So params one dot add new basic name value pair. What are the name and value? My name is email and my value is email. So the string that I got from the start potential, what is it? So I'm going to declare both of these strings globally so that I can use it everywhere. How come you guys have no questions for this? Or are you just waiting for me to finish before questions? So I'm adding this one and then I'm adding the next one. Current one dot add new basic name value pair. Password. Password. So that's it. That's the value that I've added. And I should be able to add these parameters onto my HTTP client. So HTTP get dot you have to set the entity. So HTTP get dot set entity set the entity as new URL encoded entity of this parameters. Then I'm not able to send this. Come on. Okay, I just change it into HTTP post. Now it works. So I'm going to send this data on the reserver. So I'm launching it. And I'm going to call it. I'll show you the request bin now. Server request bin. So this is the request bin. It hasn't got any request so far. I'm now going to type my email ID. On login button. The request should have been called now. I'm going to refresh this page. And voila, let's go. There's no data at all. It has called something. Something has come here, but without any data. We now need to debug what was the problem with that. It was it sent. In a minute. Just check why it was not sent. Around some the basic name value was added. Added both the new basic name value tag and from the tag and from the tag பண்ணியாச்சு post direct entity new எதால encoded form entity போட்டேன் off பண்ணான்னு சொன்னேன் அப்புறம் வரல why is it this not sending data? Alright, I'm not sure what the bug is. It'll take a lot of time, but basically I think you get the idea. This is how you send data. You can check it up here. And to get data is also the same. You just request something, and from the response value, you can take the JSON and log it onto it. Put it on the log. So next, something that I wanted to show you people is connection to a server is what we saw now. And advanced views like recycler view, card views. So recycler view is something that is pretty unique, and you can see recycler views in Google Plus app. As you see the app once you keep scrolling the app, cards will be added onto it. So in order to display cards, you build a recycler view, and in that recycler view, you'll be recycling elements again and again. So basically, it uses the same memory and loads a lot of elements. So that's why it's called a recycler view. And data is represented using cards in that. And as for third-party libraries, there are a lot of libraries like Google's sign-in library, Facebook library, Parse for notifications, Crashlytics library, which will let you find out what's wrong with your app, and OKHTTP library, which will let you bypass whatever problems that we had, right? Like the HTTP post get problems that can be bypassed using OKHTTP library, etc. So version control systems. What are version control systems? Version control systems are something which will let you, it is something that is a cloud repositories for your storage, and you can track whatever changes you have made. You just add it to the version control system, and you can go back to whatever version you are in. So you make a change, and it screws up your entire project, you can go back to it. Instead of taking backups of your project at repeated intervals, you can use version control systems so that you can go back to whatever levels you are in. And it will also be useful once you are doing it in a multi-user environment. So it is already pretty late now. So version control systems alone, I'll be able to take it in another webinar, which I think we can probably hold another webinar tomorrow at the same time for version control systems alone. That won't take long, probably half an hour or 45 minutes only. Any questions now? I know that the server part was a bit off. We can probably do that again tomorrow once I figure out what's the bug. Any response, please? Think of wrapping it up. Hello. I know it was vague because the code wasn't working properly. Anything else? I can do that again if needed tomorrow. Sure. It's not a big deal. And anyone else? Anyone else? Questions? Okay, I got feedback offline. I'm stopping it now. Thanks everyone. Bye.